You're listening to the Bear in Mind podcast, episode number 96.
A podcast uncovering identity, color, and load, where driving yourself crazy is totally sane and curable. Now your host, T. Bias.
I have to tell you what I did the last 5 days. I basically spent the last 5 days feeling like a failure and crying. And it was, not fun at all. And so I am coming out of it, and I had done a similar episode about feeling like a failure. It's episode number 77, and feeling like a failure. And I had felt like that at that time. This was a few months ago. I had felt like that, and it was a couple days. I felt like that, and I came out of it, and I learned some things about myself, and I shared that in that episode. So I highly recommend that you go back and check out episode number 77, feeling like a failure. And today I'm going to talk about when feeling like a failure is harder, because this lasted 5 days, and I'm not a big crier. Like, I don't cry a lot when I'm feeling emotional. And I was crying, and I was standing in front of, in my bathroom, and I was flossing my teeth, and I burst into tears. And at first I thought, well, am I not feeling well, or is it hormonal and all those things? And it wasn't. I mean, it lasted 5 days. I was upset, and I started to have a lot of thoughts of feeling like a failure, and I'm like, this is lasting a really long time. So what I did is I went and I got coached. I have a coach. I'm a coach, and a coach needs a coach. I believe 100% in getting coached, and this is why life coaching is life-changing. And she helped me just to make sure that I wasn't judging myself during it and just let the pity party be there. And that's what I did. And so I'm at the end of the 5 days of pity party. It's all that you can imagine. I was in bed. I ate some chocolate. I watched some TV. I had an opportunity to do that, actually. Luckily, I had some time on my own to just throw myself this little pity party. If you've had bouts like this of throwing yourself pity parties, feeling like a failure, and you cycle between them, and I cycle between them, is that there is a great opportunity for growth. Now, I didn't see that in the middle of a pity party. Nobody sees that. You just feel like a failure. You're not like, oh, how is this happening for me? I mean, you're not going to be asking yourself one of those questions. But what I really believe, when you're in that place and after you bring yourself out of it, because you will bring yourself out of it, because up until now, you have brought yourself out of it. And when you get to that place, and you can use hindsight to look at it, you can gain so much wisdom about yourself. And this is how I define getting to know yourself. Because when you hear that phrase, getting to know yourself, and take a quiz on social media or something like that, get to know yourself, who are you? I don't think you're going to find it outside of yourself. You're going to find it inside of yourself, that answer to that question. And when something like this happens, when you are so overwhelmed with emotion, and after you have passed through it, and you can come at a place of not judging yourself for having that pity party, because I can so easily go, oh my God, it was 5 days. But when you can come from your place of curiosity, which is what my coach said, she said, wait till you can get to that place where you're not judging yourself for having this pity party. When you can come to this place of curiosity and question it, be curious as to what happened. And what I learned is that when failure gets harder, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Actually, it could be a good thing. So I'm going to talk you through the journey that I have learned from using hindsight. So when she said, kind of look at it, I know a bunch of coaching tools to look at it, so I was able to do it myself without going back to another session. And so I was able to see clearly the things that happen in the days building up to me feeling overwhelmed. And I had seen a friend of mine, and I had interacted with a whole bunch of people over the course of these days. And each one of them had said something to me that I was upset about. And at the time, I could see it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting you're saying that. Oh, that's interesting you're saying that. And it built up into where I really felt like I had no self-worth. So I went back and wrote out each of the circumstances of what my friends and colleagues had said to me. And what I noticed is that I felt like it was a criticism. Now, they gave their opinion about me. They didn't call me a bad name, but they gave an opinion about me that was contrary to how I see it. So they made a comment about my life, about the work I did, about my personality, things like that. None of it was what you would probably consider direct criticism, but they were saying things that were not how I saw it. And in some ways, I viewed it as a slight insult about the things that I do. And so this is the thing about why feeling like a failure, it gets harder. You're going to be dealing with bigger emotions, and I had to deal with bigger emotions because I have been putting myself out there. I was having bigger emotions because I was opening up myself to more criticism. Most of my life, I have spent playing it small, being invisible, trying to be a wallflower. In fact, a lot of times being a person of color, you try to kind of just coast through, not make yourself so obvious, not put yourself out there. And we think that's kind of the safe way to play it. And in some cases, yes, sometimes not putting yourself out there, you're doing it for your safety, you're doing it for your family's safety, and I get it. And there are other times when you're putting yourself out there, you're creating content and things like that, and people are going to have an opinion that isn't in line, and it brings up all of your stuff. And it helps to get you know you better, because I had a lot of thoughts that I didn't like these things people were saying, and that's why feeling like a failure was harder. It's going to be harder the more I put myself out there, the more people say things about the stuff that I'm doing or the stuff that I'm not doing. It's going to bring up all of that stuff that's been sitting in the back of my mind, because it's not like they're creating it, because they're not creating it. It's already there. It's just kind of running in the back of your head, and it's going to bring it all to the fore side of your brain. I'm losing my words here. And it's going to help you become aware of it. And when you're aware of those thoughts, even thoughts like, oh, maybe they're true, maybe that criticism, it's kind of true, and you feel awful about that, it can be overwhelming. And that's what it was for me. So when failure becomes harder, it's usually a sign that you have been putting yourself out there. You have either been showing up as you, which was one of the comments I made. I was honest. I told the truth. And I got a response that I thought, okay, I didn't like that response. And when you start to do those things, people are going to also have their opinions, their viewpoints, and there are going to be a lot of thoughts that you're going to have to deal with. And man, there were so many thoughts about myself that brought up a lot of things that I still needed to work on myself. And that's good news, even though in the moment it doesn't feel like good news, but it was bringing up all of this stuff so that I can work on it. I can work on it with my coach, and I can comb through those things and understand myself, so that I can continue to handle it, but I can also continue to show up in the way that I want to show up. I don't want to show up small anymore. I want to do things. In essence, although it doesn't feel like it, I want to be criticized. It's okay to be criticized. Someone else is not going to agree with the things that I say and do. And that's okay. And I want to be challenged to be able to be prepared for that. So when feeling like a failure becomes harder, it means you're probably doing the things that you want to do, and somebody else is challenging you, helping you to get to know yourself better, providing that clarity about who you are so that you can work through that and get that resilience so you can keep going, keep putting yourself out there. And so, no, it was not fun. 5 days pity party, eating chocolate, watching television. I will have to say that as I'm coming out of it today, I can see why it was harder, why it was more days than the usual. And that's okay. And I'm still going to continue to put myself out there and tell my story. That's all I have for you this week. I'll check back with you next.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.